Welcome into another episode of Locked On Phillies, and the wild card series begin today. The Phils, they've got the bye, but who they should be rooting for is an easy decision, and I'll tell you why.
You are Locked On Phillies, your daily Philadelphia Phillies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Yes, this is Locked On Phillies. I'm your host, Connor Thomas. Thank you so much for joining us today. We come to you as part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Locked On Phillies, your number one place for daily Philadelphia Phillies content. You may know me from some of my other work in the sports talk space. I've been on air over at 97.5 The Fanatic, doing sports talk radio here in Philadelphia for over 5 years. I've been a credentialed Philadelphia Phillies media member for 4 seasons. And this is now my 4th year as the host of Locked On Phillies. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5. And if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Download the app today. The wild card series are getting underway today, and the Phillies will get a step closer to figuring out who they're going to play in the NLDS. And it's easy to tell you who the Phillies should be rooting for in the Reds-Dodgers wild card series. Like, this is a no-brainer in so many different ways, and it's not just the Dodgers are this great team, so the Phillies should be rooting for the other team. That's a big part of it, but there's more that goes into it where the advantage would be significantly in the Phillies' favor if the Cincinnati Reds win this series and also make it a long series. So we'll talk about that. We're also going to discuss the proper way to prepare with this bye week. We've seen some teams do it well. We've seen some teams lose their seasons because it doesn't seem like they handled it the proper way. Or is there a proper way to handle it? And we're also going to take a look at Trea Turner's just spectacular season. National League batting title. How important is that for what Trea Turner's getting paid, for what his time in Philadelphia has been like, and also for what the Phillies need in October? There's a lot of great stuff that we're going to get into on today's episode, but the Reds are the team, right? That's who you need to be rooting for over the next couple of days. They'll play the Dodgers tonight at 9 p.m. for game 1 of their wild card series. Now, if you don't remember the wild card series, 3 games, all at the stadium of the higher seeded team. So all 3 of these games will be out in LA at Dodger Stadium. Now, it's a 3-game series, so the 3rd game is only if necessary. First team to 2 wins, you advance to play the Phillies on Saturday at Citizens Bank Park in game 1 of the NLDS, right? Simple. Now, why the Reds? There's a lot that goes into this. First, let's get the elephant in the room out of the way. They're not the Dodgers. I know people will look at the Phillies' record against the Dodgers recently and say, well, you won a series in LA. You won a series at the bank. You took the season series from them last year when they ended up being a World Series winning team. The Phillies have the Dodgers number. You could make that case for sure. And if the Phillies played the Dodgers, I'm not going to pop on this podcast and be like, well, season's over. Good run, folks. You happen to draw those juggernaut Dodgers. No, we're not doing that. The Phillies can absolutely beat that Dodgers team. And there's a lot of advantages that they have proven this season that they have over that Dodgers team. But I'm not in the business of, you can't pick your playoff path. You can't root for your opponent. Now, I don't think Bryce Harper and Trea Turner and Kyle Schwarber should be doing that. I think they should be focused on preparing for whoever comes their way. But I don't have to lace them up. My playing days are done unless I'm playing beer league softball, all right? So as an outside observer, as we all are, as fans or people who talk about the team, I'm just saying people who are not on the team, it is totally fine, in my opinion, for you to pick out the opponent that you'd prefer, right? I don't think it's bad sports karma. In fact, I think it's silly if you don't. Oh, well, we'll just see what happens. No, talk about who you want. And it should be the Reds because they are the lesser baseball team. They snuck in because the Mets completely collapsed. And I'm not trying to take major shots at the Reds that could be clipped later if, God forbid, they were to knock off the Dodgers and then the Phillies. But the reason why the Reds are in the postseason is because their starting pitching is incredible. They have some great arms up there in Cincinnati. Hunter Green, Andrew Abbott, guys that are big time pitchers from what they've been able to accomplish this year. And what I will say to anyone who looks at that and says, so why would you want to play against them? Look at the schedule. Let's say they play 3 games in this wild card series. Today, which is Tuesday the 30th, tomorrow, Wednesday the 1st, Thursday the 2nd, right? Then they have what? 1 day off, and then they're playing the Phillies. You're going to wipe out some of their starters for the start of that series. So you're going to roll in probably facing their 4th pitcher or a guy on shorter rest than he's used to. And that is a major advantage to the Philadelphia Phillies. Why doesn't that exist against the Dodgers? Because I don't know if you've noticed this, guys. The Dodgers have like 17 starting pitchers. Hell, their DH is one of their starting pitchers. Everybody on that roster can pitch, it feels like. So when the Dodgers go through their rotation, they have a lot more options to go to. The Reds do not. So if it goes 3 and the Reds waste their starters and they roll into Philadelphia, having already used some of their top arms, Phils can jump out to an early series lead on Cincinnati. That's the number one reason from an X's and O's standpoint that goes a little deeper than just the Reds are not as good of a team as the Dodgers, because we got to dive into it more. It's not as simple as that. Are the Reds a hot team? That's something people get worried about, right? Ooh, the 6th seed, they've been dangerous because sometimes teams get hot and they find their way in. They had issues throughout the year, but they're playing really good baseball right now, so maybe you should be worried about them. Okay, that's fair. We saw that with the Diamondbacks. We saw that with the Mets. We saw that with the Phillies in 2023. So let's look at the Reds' recent stretch of games. They played a series against the Brewers to round out their season. They won 2 of 3. Now, the last 2 of those games, the Brewers didn't really have anything to play for because they had already locked up the number 1 overall seed over the Phillies. So do you take that as the same as if they were playing with everything on the line? No, I do not. Prior to that, the Reds played a 3-game home series against the Pittsburgh Pirates. They lost 2 out of 3 to that Pittsburgh team that is not good. They did sweep the Cubs, a 4-game sweep of the Cubs leading into that series with Pittsburgh. So it's not like they've been playing bad baseball, but I mean, they've dropped games to the Pirates, the Cardinals. Like, they have lost games to some teams that are not great. They got swept by the Athletics back on September 12th, 13th, and 14th. The Athletics are not a postseason. Like, that's not a great baseball team. The Reds have upside because of their starters. But when they get into those series where they're not throwing their best guys because of scheduling, they are pedestrian. Do they have great offense? No. Do they have a ballpark that plays to the Philadelphia Phillies way they want to play? Ball carries out of the Great American Ballpark up there in Cincinnati? Absolutely. Do I worry about that fan base and how raucous that environment could be? No, I just don't. The Reds don't have playoff experience. The Reds don't have this crazy, ravenous fan base that makes the environment impossible to play in. The Reds don't have these all-stars up and down the lineup. They're a team that is the 6th seed for a reason. And they more made it on the collapse of the Mets than a run that they went on. So they're obviously the pick. I'll say again, I'm not terrified of the Dodgers, right? I will not be picking the Phillies to lose that series. I'm going to pick the Phillies to beat any team they play because I think the Phillies are the best team in baseball. I really do. After that regular season, I'll take them against anybody, especially on a playoff stage where they have played so many times over the last 3 seasons and now into a 4th season. So I'm not against playing the Dodgers, but if given the opportunity to face the Cincinnati Reds for all those reasons I just laid out, that's the pick. So Red October doesn't technically start until Saturday, this Saturday, the 4th, when the Phillies will play their first postseason game. But Reds October, that might start today. If you're rooting the way that I am, it should be, let's go Cincinnati, knock off those Dodgers, because when you look at the playoff picture in the National League, if the teams remaining are the Reds, Brewers, Cubs, Padres, yeah, give me my chances with the Philadelphia Phillies, because I think that very much opens the path up to a World Series for this team. So that's what I think your rooting interest should be. You can let me know in the comments on YouTube if you disagree and you want the Dodgers, or if you don't think it's smart to be picking a path. I'm not afraid to say that I want the Phillies to play the Reds. Maybe some people feel a little bit sketchy about putting that out there because of karma or whatever, but I'm making my case strongly here for why that is your rooting interest. And the consolation prize would be at least make it a 3-game wild card series. The worst case scenario is the Dodgers win it in 2 and they roll in pretty well rested and pretty confident to a series with the Philadelphia Phillies. But hey, it's up to those teams to decide. The Phillies are hanging out. And as they hang out, what are they doing to prepare for that impending National League Divisional Series? We'll talk about the strategy they're using, the strategies that have been employed in the past, and what the best way to go about it seems to be, if there even is one, as we continue today's episode of Locked On Phillies. Let's talk about Nutrafol first, though, because, guys, your hair is important. And you've probably seen a million ads for hair growth products and thought, sure, like that actually works. There are so many products out there, it's hard to know which ones are actually going to do anything. That's why you should give Nutrafol a closer look. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement brand, trusted by over 1.5 million people. And now Nutrafol is the official hair growth partner of Major League Baseball. You can feel great about what you're putting into your body, since Nutrafol hair growth supplements are backed by peer-reviewed studies and NSF content certified, the gold standard in third-party certification for supplements. Whether you're at work, out with friends, or even just getting ready in the morning, Nutrafol gives you more confidence in your daily routine. You want to be feeling good. You want to be looking good. That's important. And it's important to Nutrafol that you get that. So you can see thicker, stronger, faster growing hair with less shedding in just 3 to 6 months with Nutrafol. And for a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com and enter promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Find out why Nutrafol is the best-selling hair growth supplement brand at Nutrafol.com, spelled Nutrafol.com. Promo code LOCKEDONMLB. One more time, that's Nutrafol.com. Promo code LOCKEDONMLB. Let's talk a little bit about preparation. It's very, very important. In fact, you have some preparation you should be doing ahead of the postseason and Red October. If you're checking us out in podcast form today, make sure you're rating and reviewing. We're available wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also watch us on YouTube. And if you're checking Locked On Phillies out on YouTube, hit that subscribe button. It's free and easy to just hit that subscribe button. It takes like a second, but it'll get you notifications when new episodes are posted. That way you don't miss any of the content of what you need to know ahead of Red October. So I appreciate everyone who's done that, everyone who's going to do that. If you're watching on YouTube today, I got to give a shout out to my guy, John Brazier, who's the director of Phillies Fun and Games. Hooked us up over on the radio side with some good swag for Red October. I'm wearing this nice new Red October 2025 hat. It says it on the side there for the 2025 postseason. So get yourself geared up with Red October stuff. And thank you to the Phillies and John Brazier, director of Fun and Games, for hooking me up with this cool hat and some other great goodies ahead of another big postseason run for the Fightin' Phils. Now, that's the way I've prepared. I've already told you how you, as a fan, needs to prepare. Now let's get to the important stuff. What does the team need to do to prepare? What should be the strategy? Well, we know that today they're having a team workout, 1 p.m. at the bank. Open to media members. Unfortunately, I won't be able to get down there, but we'll have some reports from how everybody looks. How Trea Turner's progressing. He came back on Sunday, but what does he look like? What does everyone look like health-wise? How's everyone feeling? Tomorrow, and we're going to talk about it heavily on tomorrow's episode, the Phils are doing a really cool thing. They're doing an open to fans inter-squad scrimmage. So they're going to divide into 2 sides. They're going to play a game at the bank, $10 tickets, proceeds go to charity. I've already talked to people who said they're going to open up the second level of the stadium, which they weren't planning on doing because demand for tickets is so high. I like that. And I like that the Phillies are doing it in front of fans. In previous years, they have not done that, right? Last year when they got the first round bye, and that was their first year getting the bye, they didn't have this open game. They did inter-squad stuff, but I like opening it up to kind of keep the environment because sometimes it can be a little lax when you're just facing your own teammates in an empty stadium. It feels too much like practice, right? And I think part of this is not just the reps. I think it's the mentality. Don't have to get ready if you stay ready, right? That's an old saying of preparedness or always being focused on the task at hand. So maybe this is something the Phillies are trying to do to mentally get themselves prepared for the environment, right? Outside of that, I don't know what more you can do. It's kind of weird, right? Because some people will look at the first round bye and say, that's a disadvantage. You've got this week off, and then you're playing against a team that just came off a big postseason series win. And that is a team with momentum that has seen pitching and all of this stuff. And I get it. Absolutely. But I can point you to the Houston Astros, last year's Los Angeles Dodgers, teams that had the first round bye and didn't seem to have much trouble fighting their way to a World Series, right? Go out there, take care of business and win. You're the better team. It can be done, folks. So I don't know that there is a true special formula, right? We saw the Braves a couple years in a row in the National League Divisional Series get cooked by the Phillies. They had the first round bye. They looked like they came out flat. Now, I'm not saying like, oh, well, they were not doing stuff they should be doing. If you think that of the teams with a first round bye, which it's the Blue Jays, it is the Brewers, it is the Phillies, and the Mariners are the four teams with first round byes in this year's postseason picture. Also, if you had parlayed that ahead of the season, you'd be a trillionaire today because that's wild that those are the four teams with byes. But if you looked at all four of those teams, not a single one is just sitting around saying, oh, yeah, just long toss today, maybe a little BP tomorrow, take the day off, and then we'll see you Saturday for the start of the divisional series. No, they're all working hard. They're all going through, leaving no stone unturned to try and figure out the best way to have guys prepared. I just don't know that there is really rhyme or reason to it. I think each situation is individual. And what I will say is that the Phillies have done a pretty darn good job. If you look at some of the moves that they've made roster-wise and injury-wise at making sure their players are at their best when it matters the most. One of the big things that we always go back to is a couple of years ago, Zach Wheeler getting shut down for a month. That happens because he has shoulder issues. Then he comes back into postseason. He's ready to roll. He's a huge part of that postseason run, right? The Phillies made that decision. Trea Turner, making sure that they handle his injury this year the right way so that he's available for the postseason, leaving him behind on road trips to prioritize rest and health and recovery. The Phillies have done a really good job of putting their players in the best position to be successful. It hasn't always led to success because at the end of the day, you got to go out there and beat another really good baseball team. But I have faith in this organization that they know what they're doing. And they also have guys that are really well trained in this. John Middleton has been the owner for what feels like forever, but he's seen a lot of good baseball in this city. Dave Dombrowski, he's a future Hall of Famer at the president of baseball operations position for the Phillies. He knows what it takes to be rolling at a World Series level caliber going into October. And Rob Thompson, he gets ripped sometimes, rightfully, for strategy decisions. He gets lauded sometimes, rightfully, for the way he handles a locker room. But what is the number one thing that Rob Thompson received compliments for as a coach in baseball before becoming the Phillies manager? He did it in New York. He did it here in Philadelphia. He still does it here in Philadelphia. This might seem trivial. I'll tell you why it matters. He was the guy that handled spring training up in New York. Well, I guess it was down in Florida, but for the Yankees, here in Philadelphia. And since taking over managerial duties for Joe Girardi 4 years ago, he's continued to play a big part in the planning out of spring training. What does that mean? When they should practice, how they should practice, what they should practice on, the ins and outs of scheduling that. That, you could argue, even more than keeping the locker room together, is Rob Thompson's bread and butter. Doesn't that seem like that would be applicable to a situation like this, where you have this week where you have to figure out how should we manage it? It just seems to make sense that he would be good at this, right? And for everyone looking at last year's, well, they weren't ready against the Mets. I don't know that that was they didn't prepare the right way. The Phillies were on a downward trajectory in the second half. The Mets were on an upward trajectory in the second half. You ran into the hotter team that played better baseball. And it sucks, but I don't know that that had anything to do with the week leading up to it. So at the end of the day, do I think the bye matters all that much in a negative way? No, I don't. Do I think there are certain pitfalls? Yes. Do I think the Phillies have the people in place to make sure they avoid those? Yes. And we will only truly know the results of what they did when we see them on the field Saturday and Monday and Wednesday as they play the National League Divisional Series. But where we sit right now, I think they're doing everything they can to prepare. And that should make Phillies fans pretty darn comfortable. There's an X factor that we're going to talk about next that should make the Phillies fans incredibly comfortable ahead of Red October this year. And we haven't really dove into this guy's season, but we're going to talk about Trea Turner and something he accomplished this year that cannot go understated, because it's exactly what the Phillies have been missing. Let's talk about FanDuel first, though, because the NFL season, it's rolling along, and FanDuel has an offer you don't want to miss. Right now, new customers can bet just $5 and $300 in bonus and get $300 in bonus bets if you win. That's right. Pick a bet, put down $5, and if it hits, you're going to unlock $300 in bonus bets to use across the app. Now, last night, I went to my FanDuel app, and I bet the under in the Miami-New York Monday Night Football game. And it did not hit, and it should have, and it was dumb that it didn't. And I'm mad that I made that bet. But that's the point, right? Even ones where you feel pretty good about it, there's always a chance you lose it. So here's what you do. You don't take that chance. You find the best odds that you can find on the FanDuel app, and you bet your $5 on that. Whether it's, I don't know, a certain running back to go 25-plus yards in the game, or a major college football mismatch. And you'll get, even though the odds are not great, those $300 in bonus bets, and then you use those to make the risky bets. And FanDuel will always pay you out quickly and easily. Paying out is never risky, but they've got a lot of different ways you can find winners: parlays, props, futures, money line, spread, all of that stuff. They've got it available on FanDuel. That's why they're the best. So what are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com to download the FanDuel app today and get started. Trea Turner, what a season he had. And I know we might have forgotten about it a little bit as he was dealing with his hamstring, his grade 1 hamstring strain back in the past couple of weeks. But don't let this be lost on you. Trea Turner accomplished something major this year. He won the National League batting title. And he did so by being the only player in the National League to hit over 300. He batted .304, 31 doubles, 7 triples, 15 homers, 69 RBIs, 94 runs scored, 36 stolen bases, and an .812 OPS. Those are some darn good numbers. The power, probably not quite where the Phillies want it to be. You'd like him to be around 20 to 25 home runs. But you can't argue with batting .304, and you certainly can't argue with the National League batting title. This is a guy that had to get a standing ovation in his first year in Philadelphia because he was not cutting it. He was having the worst season of his professional career. And because of that, a lot of people have questioned since, is the contract worth it? Why did the Phillies do this? Was Trea Turner the right guy to go after? All of this stuff. This year should tell you they made the right move, acquiring Trea Turner for this baseball team. Do you know the last time that the Philadelphia Phillies had a player win a batting title? I'll give you a second. 1958. Yes, 1958 was the last time. It was Richie Ashburn. And now, Part of Citizens Bank Park, Ashburn Alley, is named after that guy. That's how long ago it was. New stadiums have been built to the point where Richie Ashburn is such a legend that part of the ballpark is named after him. That was the last time a Philly won a batting title, and Trea Turner has done it. It's crazy that you look back on some of the great Phillies teams and say, well, J-Roll never did it. Utley never did it. Look at, I don't know, Ben Revere had some good batting average years. He never did it. Like, there were players throughout that time frame where John Kruk, Mike Schmidt, Scott Rowland, Bobby Abreu, go through the great Phillies of whenever. Larry Bow, like 1958 was the last time. That's kind of crazy. And it should show you just how special this accomplishment is. But it's not just, hey, good job, Trea, mission accomplished. No, while he does deserve his support and credit for the season that he's had, there's another level to look at this, right? What have the Phillies been missing the past 3 postseasons? Where do they fall apart? You could say last year, oh, it was the bullpen. Okay. Well, that was a one-off issue. You can't say it was the starting pitching because their starting pitching's been awesome. You can't say it's been their defense because even though they have had points over the past 4 years where their defenses look questionable, in the postseason it hasn't killed them. You can't even say it's been the base running. The only real base running gaffe in the postseason in the past 4 years has been Bryce Harper getting doubled off to end a game in Atlanta, and then Orlando Arcia saying, attaboy Harper, and the next thing you know, he's hitting 2 nukes in the next game up here in Philly, and the Phillies win that series. So really the issue, and we know it, and you've been saying it to me all year in the comments, in tweets, in passing when I see people in person. What if the bats go cold? What if they just don't hit? Well, that can happen for power hitters. We've seen this year, Kyle Schwarber, even with his 56 home runs and over 130 RBIs, has had stretches of the season where it's like, yo, he's not really hitting the baseball right now. Hot and cold stretches, right? Bryce Harper, hot and cold stretches. Even guys that have really come on strong at the end of the year, JT Realmuto, Brandon Marsh, clearly hot and cold stretches. They were digging themselves out of some hole that they had, right? The Phillies have not had a true top of the lineup hit for average guy, right? Where even when everyone else is going cold, maybe you're not producing the home run swing from the middle of your lineup. Having a guy that gets on base, right? Batting average, on base percentage. Trea Turner is awesome in both of those categories this year compared to his peers in the National League. There is no better contact hitter in the National League this year than Trea Turner. So if you're worried about the bats going cold, the number one indicator of, hey, we have something that we did not have in the past, because Trea Turner had a better year last year than he did in his first year with the Phillies, but it still wasn't this level of like production. It wasn't. He was a good player. He wasn't an elite player last year. You could even go potentially great player, an all-star starter at shortstop. He deserves credit. The first year was terrible. The second year was much better. This year has been the Trea Turner you thought you were getting, right? And now you have that guy to put on a postseason roster where you say our major concern with this team has got to be what happens when the power outage happens. Because it could, right? Honestly, over the amount of games you got to play in the postseason, you probably will have a game or two where the power isn't there. But average is what it is, right? It's what you do most often. And Trea Turner, more often than any player in the National League, gets hits. It's simple. So that's a great feeling in the positive sense for the Phillies heading into this Red October that I think is the number one biggest difference. The starting pitching is good again. The bullpen has upside, but question marks. The defense and base running, we've seen it at points this year, sometimes good, sometimes not so good. But the biggest thing that they have that they did not have last year in their arsenal is a guy having the season that Trea Turner just had and is still having, and we hope will have in October. He may be the number one piece offensively for this Phillies team, and he's a pretty darn good one to have. So, do you feel better than when you sat down to listen to or watch the podcast today? I hope you do. That's part of my goal throughout the week is we're going to be getting you hyped up for Red October because you should be hyped. You got a darn good baseball team, and they're in a darn good spot. So tomorrow, we're going to be talking about Game 1 of Reds-Dodgers. Take a look at what we learned about the Philadelphia Phillies' future NLDS opponent, whoever that may be. We're going to take a look at the inter-squad scrimmage, what you want to see, what you don't want to see, what the fan reaction should be. And we're also going to take a look at some other stuff from this season that tells you a little bit about what we can expect in Red October. So we're another day closer. We've got some playoff baseball tonight, even though it's not the Phillies. You starting to feel the juices flowing yet? You should be. And we are here on Locked On Phillies. So thank you so much for joining us. Once again, we're part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Daily episodes on what you need to know about the first round bye NL East champion Philadelphia Phillies. Please make sure you're rating and reviewing, subscribing to the YouTube, all that great stuff that really helps us out here and helps you out. And I'll talk to you tomorrow on the next episode of Locked On Phillies.